Hey guys, we're going to be finishing up the register form that we started in the last video. There's currently two problems with it. The first, if we get an error with our form, we're not displaying it to the user. So for example, if I have the username AAA, we successfully create it, right? But if I submit it again, we get register as false because we've already registered a username, and we can't have the username there twice. So that's not good. And we're also allowing pretty much any username, email, and password. We want to have some validation. So we want to add those things to our register form. And we also, when we submit the form and it's successful, we want to navigate to a different page on our website. So that's what we're going to be working on. So to start off with the validation and formatting errors, we're going to be looking at something in Sequelize. So Sequelize lets us basically check single fields to make sure they are valid, and here are the different validation checks that they can do. And all we do is we pick the attribute we want to check, we do validate, and then we pick whichever ones we want, we can add them in. So for example, if our username we only want alphanumeric, we can do that. So I'm going to bring over my project here. So this is the backend or the server for the register form right now, and if I click on user, not our resolver, our model actually, we can set requirements. So I'm going to validate the username. So the first thing I'd like to do is set only allow alphanumeric, so we don't have weird looking usernames. And I also want to set a length. Oops. So I'm going to say a length of, let's say it can be as short as 3 characters and as long as 25. This is kind of just me arbitrarily picking numbers. The other thing I want to do is, instead of just adding the value here, what you can do is add a message too, like how they have here. So they set the arguments and the message. And the reason for that is you can actually throw an error message if this condition is not met. So here I'm going to say args true, and then here I'm going to say message, and my message is going to be the username can only contain letters and numbers. And then same thing here, we can do args, and we can do any number of these, right? So message, and it's going to be the username needs to be between 3 and 25 characters long. And unique will automatically be checked for us. And we'd like to do pretty much the same thing with the email. So validate, we can copy. Now we don't really need to do an alphanumeric check or a length check per se, but I believe, look, there is a is email check, so we could do that, and we can say args, we would like that, and a message invalid email. So if it doesn't match this check, it doesn't go through, it's somehow invalid. And then maybe for our password we'd like to set a length too, so we'll say type, and then we're going to say validate, and in here I'm just going to set a length for the password. So we'll copy what we put here, and maybe for the password we're going to have 5 to, let's call 100 characters. So the password needs to be between 5 and 100 characters long. Now you can do more checks on the password if you'd like to. For example, you can check if they uppercase some letter or if there's any numbers in it, all kinds of different things. And you can even do custom validations. But I think this is a pretty good sample. And so what we want to do is throw this error back to our form over here. Like, I would like to see here what the error is that I get when this happens. So to do this, we're going to change up our schema a little bit. So in our user schema here, instead of just returning a boolean, I'm going to return a better object. So I'm going to create a schema here called error.js, and I'm going to export default. I'm going to create an error type. So the type error has two things: a path, which is a string, and a message, which is a string. And I suppose the message could be null. So the path is what's wrong. For example, the username could be wrong, the email could be wrong, the password could be wrong. And then the message is what's wrong. So in our user schema, we're going to create a type register response. In our response, we're going to return OK, which is a Boolean value of whether it was basically the request went through. And then if it went through, we can return the user. And if it didn't go through, we can return, and this is going to be nullable, we can do errors. So this is going to be an array of error. So we're either going to have an error, they're either going to pass, so this is kind of how this type's going to work. We're going to return it here. So register response. And if it's okay, we'll get a user that is not null, and our errors will be null. But if it's not okay, our user is going to be null, and we're going to have errors to look at. So that's why one of these will be null always, so we can't use the bang sign here. Okay, so now we need to change up our resolver so it returns things in this format. And so let's come over here. So here's what we're doing right now. So instead of returning like that, we really want to return like this. So we say okay, which is true, and our user, which we can say const user is equal to this, right? And now for our errors, we're going to return okay is false. And notice how I don't specify an errors here. I could put errors null, but I don't need to do that. So here, user is going to be null, and errors is going to be an array of errors. But how do I actually get this array of errors? I can't just pass an error object back. How do I know? Where am I getting these errors from? Well, all the errors are going to be in this error object somewhere. All we have to do is basically grab it and extract it. So I have a little function that I've used in previous projects called format errors. So I'm going to copy this and just put it over here. So how format errors works is I'm going to pass in the error and the models. So for example, format errors, I pass in the error and models. We need to pass in the error so it knows what errors to format, and the models is just a Sequelize model because we're checking basically the type of the error, so we need to have this. So what this is doing is it's checking the error object, and it's saying if this error object is a validation error, then we're going to do one thing. If it's not a validation error, we don't know what type of error it is, because we're only in our model over here. All of these are validation things. So we're checking if we're getting any type of validation error because we know what the message should be. So that's what we handle here. Otherwise, we say something else went wrong. We don't know what went wrong. We weren't expecting an error except for validation errors. So we don't know what went wrong. We just say something went wrong. In the path here, I'm putting name. You could put anything here. Okay, and I just want to make sure that I did in my error. Okay, good. I want to make sure I said message and not that. Okay. And then here what I'm doing is e.errors has all the errors, and then I'm just mapping through them, and I'm doing a Lodash command called pick because we don't want to return the whole object. We just care about the path and the message. So let's go ahead and import Lodash. This is something we're going to have to install. So I'm in the server folder. I can do yarn add Lodash to install this library. Okay, so cool. So now we should be throwing back errors. We're formatting the errors nicely here. We're checking if it's a validation error. If it is, we're going to map through all of them and format them. The only formatting we're really doing is just picking these two attributes from that object. if you've never seen this before, I can real quick explain what pick is doing in more depth. So let's say you have the object A and B. So there's two properties. If I were to pick on this guy, the output is going to be an object where it's just A. So whatever you pass here, it just grabs those properties from the object. So it's going to get rid of any other objects. So we can get rid of that. So that's what that's doing. We can put that here. Okay. So let's give this a run and see what happens. I'm going to open up console. Console's good, so we're not getting any errors there. So now I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Oh, so on our client side now, we're going to have to account for a different response object. So over here, I was not doing any type of selection, but now I need to. Here is GraphQL. Okay, so I want to get OK. I would like to get the user. I actually don't care about the user, so I'm just going to ignore that. And I want the path and message. These are really the only fields I care about, since we're not using the user for anything. You could get the user back if you wanted to, but we don't need it, so why even grab it? Okay. So let's run that. So A. Alright, so let's see what's going on here. So we can see our errors. So we have two errors here. Our username, the username is not the right length. It's not between 3 and 25 characters. And our email is invalid. It should be our password is also too short. So let's see if we missed something with our validation here. Oh, you know what? That's one problem. So our validation here, this will not work. So let's get rid of that. And the reason for that is I forgot. We're hashing the password. So for this, if I wanted to do any type of validation on the password here, I would have to do it here. I would have to do a check if password is greater than blah blah blah, throw error or something, because we're going to be hashing this guy. So up here I would have to do if password.length is less than 10, or whatever I want, 5. We're going to throw new error XYZ, right? So I could just do a return object OK false, and then errors and object. We'll go ahead and keep this. Why not? It's good to make sure you have a minimum length on your password, I suppose. So if the password length is less than 5, we're going to say a password is wrong, and our message will be, we can copy this guy, because we basically want the same error message. The password needs to be greater, has to be, why not? Let's set a between. In Python you can do something like this, which I really like. I don't think you can do it in JavaScript. Oh, whoa, what the heck? So my formatter just formatted to this. So we're going to say password length is less than 5, or password.length is greater than 100. We're going to say password, needs to be between 5 and 100 characters long. Okay. So let's request this again. Now we should only get one error, right? Because it should hit that password one first. So we get the password error. Now we can do this longer, and now we should get these two errors again. And we do. So now all we need to do is, instead of just showing it in the console here, I'd like to see a little pop-up, or maybe the fields go red, something, right? So let's do that. So here there's three possible errors. Something's wrong with the username, something's wrong with the email, or the password. So I'm going to say username error. And password error. Let's put that down here actually. Email error. Okay. So now when we do variables here and we mutate, we need to actually specify which ones we want. So const username, email, password. And that's what we want to pass here, username, email, password as variables. Cool. And then our response object here, I was going to go look at what the shape of it was. So it'd be easy. So we're going to click on data register, and then that's where we're going to look at things. So const OK errors is equal to response.data.register. So if OK, what we want to do is redirect them to a different page. So to do that, we just do this.props.history.push, and we specify what page. So we'll just for now go to the home page, which is there. You know, we'll console log this still, why not? So history is given to us by this route. Because we made register a route, it passes down to us this history object, and we push to add a new route. Otherwise, it's not okay. There were some errors. So we're going to say this dot set state, and we're going to update our state, and we're going to pass in what the errors are. So how do we know what the errors are? Well, we have an array here, and if the path in the message, we just need to loop through and set them. So I'm going to say, actually, you know what? I don't even need to do set state right here. What I'm going to say is const. We're not going to say errors. We'll just call this error. This is going to be an object, and we're going to say errors dot for each. We're going to say error is going to be equal to. Let's actually just expand this and grab the path and message. So the path is equal to the message. And really it's going to be the path, which is, and then error. So we're going to be looping through every error. And for example, if we have a password, we're going to really be setting error dot password error is equal to whatever message we have, like too long or whatever. So then at the end of this loop, we're going to have an object here with all the errors. And it's okay if there's an overwrite, because it's okay if we can like basically have them clear the first username error. Like if there's multiple problems with their username, that's okay. They can resolve it one at a time basically. So now we're going to do this.setState error. Now we're not actually doing anything with the state, but let's just make sure the state actually appears. So I'm going to say A. We don't get any errors. I'm going to come over here and look at the register component, and I see looks like our password error did not show up, so something did go wrong. So let's just look at how we're doing this. Errors, we're looping through path, message, password error. I'm going to just say console.log error and see what the value of, oh, here's the problem. There we go. Had the quote curly braces around it when we really just want to pass it like that. So we'll console log this to make sure as well. So good, this is what we expect. So now in our state, we should see password error, cool, has this message. So now we just need to display this to the UI. So I'm going to get rid of this console log, we don't need it anymore. So the first UI I'm going to do on this is have the input turn red. So to do this, we just display a error prop on the input. So error is going to be shown when we have a username error. So here we're going to get the username error, email error, and password error. And username error. And here we will show a email error. And a password. Okay, so error is expecting a boolean, and a empty string results in false. So when I hit enter over here, or when we see this just refresh, well, type of strings applied to input expected boolean. Okay, so this is exactly what I was just talking about. I was thinking it will auto cast it, but it doesn't. So to cast this to a boolean, you can put a double bang sign. And the reason for that is if I have the string, this guy, and I put a, this evaluates to false. So if I put a bang sign on it, it'll now evaluate to true. But really I want to turn this thing into false, or I want to turn it into a boolean and cast it. So if I double bang sign, it just turns it from true to false. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically it turns this string into a boolean. So now when I hit submit, we see password is red. And if I add a password that's 5, we can now see they're all red. And what we can do is in the submit, at the start of the submit, we should really be setting this dot, well, I was going to say at the start of on submit, but really it's when you start typing. You want to basically say all these errors gone away. So username error, you know what, actually I'm going to say it when we submit again. So this dot set state, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but when I submitted, this username stayed red even though we fixed that error, which it shouldn't show that. So username error is equal to that, and we're just going to go down. So just resetting the error in our form. So now we get this guy red, I make it an appropriate length, these two will now turn red, and this one will stay white because it's now good. So the last part is to actually display that message, and Semantic UI has a nice little message card. And what we want to do is something like this, where we show a list. So I'm just going to copy this message. And we're going to show this message at the bottom. So this is an error message, so we're putting error here, and we only want to display this if we have an error. So what I'm going to do is say, basically put a boolean. So we're going to return null if this is not true. And we're going to check for a username error or a email error or a password error. So if any of these errors are true, then what we will do is show this guy right here. Otherwise, we don't show anything. And then in our list, we're going to say, sure, there was some errors with your submission. That's a fine thing to say. And then our list here is of all the messages. Really what we want to add to this list is the errors that are not empty. So we want to check if this is empty, so I'm going to say const error list, and we're going to say if username error, then we're going to add it to our error list. Oh, sorry, push username error, there we go. And we're going to do this for each error. So if the error is present, we push it on the list. Email error. Oops. And finally password. Okay, so that is all our errors covered. Let's see if we have this working. So I submit, oh, please select your home country. So now we actually need to put our list that we just created in here. So this is called error list. So I hit submit. It says the password needs between 5 and 100 characters long, and we see this is red. So I'm gonna go ahead and make it 500, or not 500, at least 5. And it says invalid email, and the username needs to be at least 3 characters long. So I'm gonna say Bob, and now our username error went away. We just have an invalid email, and now I'm gonna say bob@bob.com, and I'm gonna hit submit. Username needs to be unique, so we've already made a user with the username Bob, so let's change that to maybe Bob Jr. and give that a try. And bam, after making all those changes to our form, we're able to successfully submit. But that's pretty cool, right? And you saw we changed pages, and we're now able to see each and every error that happens, and we can tell the user as they're doing it. So this is one way to show errors, and I think it's a pretty decent, and I'm pretty happy with how our register form is looking. One little small improvement we could make, but I'm going to skip this for now, is actually do some client-side validation, because we don't need to send password to the server if it's blank, right? I should not send this to the server because all these fields are blank, but I'm doing it anyway. But that's a separate issue we can deal with at a different time, and it's not too big of a deal. But this is nice, seeing this little error message. Our register form is coming quite well together. So I think in the next video we're going to start on a login. So now that we're able to create users, we want to be able to log in and use our account. So let me know what you think of this method of creating a login page and a register page and handling errors. I think this is a decent way, but let me know if you think there's a better way to handle errors. I'd love to hear it. I am always looking at ways to improve how I'm doing this, because it's a little clunky, but it works quite nice. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. The code will be up on GitHub.